Hey guys, it's Ms. Damaso. We are going to take some time right now to do our Chapter 2 study guide, getting us ready for our Chapter 2 test. So we're going to jump right on into it and get ourselves going here. So first thing on our Chapter 2 study guide that we see are parallel lines cut by a transversal. So in the first problem, we're finding the value of the variable if M is parallel to L, so parallel means they never intersect. And then I'm given angle, measure of angle 1, and I'm given the measure of angle 6, or excuse me, angle 5. So then I take a look, I see that my transversal line is this one right in the center here. These two angles are on the same side of the transversal and they're in corresponding positions. So these are corresponding angles. And remember, corresponding means it's like almost like a copy and paste. If I copied angle 1 and pasted it down below, it would be in the same position as angle 5. Well, I know that corresponding angles are congruent. That means they're exactly the same. So this and these two angles should be equal to each other. So I'm just going to take the two equations and set them equal to each other, and then I'm going to solve the equation for x. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. I get 44 equals 3x plus 38. Then I'm going to subtract 38 on both sides. I get 6 equals 3x. And my last step is to divide by 3. I get x equals 2 degrees. And the question only asks me to find the value of the variable, so I'm finished. Number 2, find the value of the variable if P is parallel to Q. So make my parallel markings here, which means that this line through the center is my transversal. Given the measure of angle 1 is 6x, and the measure of angle 6, which is right here, is 120. Now, these are on the interior of the two parallel lines, and they are also on alternate sides. So these are alternate interior angles. I know that alternate interior angles are congruent, so they should be exactly the same. So I'm just going to set these two equations equal to each other. 6x equals 120. And then it's just one quick step to get x by itself. I divide both sides by 6. I get x equals 20 degrees. And that's all that the question asks me to do, is find the variable. So I am finished. Number 3, excuse me. Find the measure of the angle indicated in bold. So I want to know what this angle is right here. Before I can do that, though, I have to figure out what x is. So I've got my two parallel lines right here, and they're shown that they're parallel because they have arrows, which means this center line right here is my transversal. These two angles are on the same side, and they're on the interior. So these are same side interior angles. Now, I know same side interior angles are supplementary, so they're not congruent, but supplementary means if I take these two angles and I add them together, I should get 180 degrees, a straight line. So I'm going to take these two angles, 9x, and then I'm going to add the second angle, 28x minus 5, set it equal to 180. And then I'm going to solve it like an algebra problem. So first I'm going to combine like terms. 9x and 28x gives me 37x. Bring down my minus 5 equals 180. I add 5 to both sides. I get 37x equals 185. And then I divide both sides by 37. I get x equals 5 degrees, which is fantastic, but it asks me to find the measure of the angle indicated in bold. So I need to know what this angle is, so I need to substitute in my value of x into this equation. So instead of the x, I'm going to put 9 times 5, and 9 times 5 gives me 45 degrees. So that angle right there is 45 degrees. Make sure you read the question, because if you just figure out what x is and you don't do this part, you're going to get the question wrong. Number 4, find the measure of the angle indicated in bold. Again, I have two parallel lines, and I have my transversal going right through. Now these two angles make an x, and are right across from each other. So when they make an X and are opposite of each other, they are vertical angles. I know vertical angles are congruent. So because of that, I'm going to take these two equations, set them equal to each other, and then I'll be able to solve for X. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 12x from both sides. I like to subtract the smaller x because I don't have to deal with negatives. I get 2x minus 6 equals 12. Then I add 6 to both sides. I get 2x equals 18. Divide both sides by 2. I get x equals 9 degrees. But I'm not finished yet because it asks me to find the measure of the angle in bold. So I have to take this 9 and I have to plug it into this equation right here. So instead of 14x minus 6, where I have the x, I'm going to plug in a 9. So 14 times 9 gives me 126. And 126 minus 6 gives me 120 degrees. There's my final answer. All right, so that's the first objective on the quiz. The test. Parallel lines cut by a transversal. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to check, make sure everything is recording, because the last time I made this video, it wasn't recording me. Okay, it's recording me, so we're fantastic. Number 5, solve for x and y. So this time I'm talking about triangles. I know that the interior angles of a triangle should always add up to be 180 degrees, and that's every triangle ever. So if I take a look at this picture here, I look like I have two small triangles, and I definitely see this triangle on the right is probably the right one to start with because I'm already given this angle right here is 31, and I'm given this angle over here is 82 degrees. So to figure out this angle over here, x, all I have to do is add these two together and subtract from 180, right? Because I know in total it should be 180 degrees. So if I subtract those two, oops, I forgot a subtraction sign. Woo. If I subtract those two from 180, then it should give me what's left over. So if I add 82 and 31, I get 113. And if I subtract 113 from 180, I get 87, excuse me, oh my goodness, Mr. Basso, it's 67 degrees. So my x value, let me rewrite that, I apologize, is 67 degrees. Now the other one I need to figure out is this y value right over here. I know that the y and this 82 degrees, when I put them both together, this makes a straight line. These two angles are a linear pair. And a linear pair means if I add them together, I should get a straight line. Straight line is 180 degrees. So to figure out my y value, I'm just going to take 180 and I'm going to subtract 82 from it. And that's going to give me what's left over. That's going to give me my y. So my y value is equal to 98 degrees. And we're done. So all interior angles always add up to be 180 degrees in a triangle. Number 6 is similar. I've got 3 angles and I know they're all on the interior of the triangle. So when I add all 3 of these angles together, I should get 180. It asks me to find the measure of angle A. Before I can do that though, I have to figure out what my x values are. So I'm going to add all 3 of these angles together, angle A plus angle B plus angle C, and I should get 180 degrees. Angle A is given to me, it's x plus 17, plus angle B is 3x plus 5, plus angle C has got this box, which means it is a 90-degree angle. It's a right angle. So I add 90. Then I set it equal to 180, and then I'm going to solve like an algebra problem. So the first thing I'm going to do is combine like terms. 3x and x gives me 4x. And then I'm going to add all my numbers together. So 90 and 5 gives me 95. 95 plus 17 gives me 112. Now I want to get the x all by itself, so I subtract 112 from both sides. I get 4x equals 68. And then I divide both sides by 4. I get x equals 17 degrees. Now that's fantastic, but I need to plug that into this equation right here. So instead of x, I'm going to put 17 and then plus 17. So 17 plus 17 means the measure of angle A is 34 degrees. Now, number 7 is a little bit different because I've got two angles on the interior, but then I also have this angle on the outside. This is my exterior angle. So if you remember from our theorems that we talked about, the triangle exterior angle theorem says if you add the two remote interior angles together, that means the two angles on the inside that are not touching this one, if you add them together, they should equal that exterior angle over there. So if you add your two interior angles, remote interior angles, you should get your exterior angle. So it's just going to be an equation. I'm going to solve it for x. So my first interior angle is 4x minus 3. My second interior angle is 2x plus 17, and that should equal 8x minus 24. Now it's algebra. I'm going to combine some like terms. 4x and 2x gives me 6x. 17 and negative 3 gives me 14. Equals 8x minus 24. Now I'm going to get all my x's to one side, so I subtract 6x. You get 14 equals 2x minus 24. I add 24 on both sides. I get 38 equals 2x. And then my last step is to divide by 2 on both sides. So I get x equals 19 degrees. Question does not ask me to do anything else except solve for x, so I'm finished. All right, last one, number 8 for this objective. Same idea. I know if I add up all the angles together in a triangle, I should get 180 degrees. I ask you to find a couple unknown angles. First thing I always look for is a triangle that has two numbers given to me. So if you look at this center triangle right here, I'm given two numbers. I'm given this box is 90, right? It's right angle. And I'm given this angle right here is 48 degrees. So I can figure out this angle right over here. And I can figure it out by doing 180 minus these two numbers. So 180 minus 90 plus 48. Well, 90 plus 48 is 138. And if I subtract 138 from 180, I get 42 degrees. So this angle right here is 42 degrees. Now, I see that this angle and x make an x, and they're right across from each other. That means they are vertical angles. I know vertical angles are congruent. So if this is 42 degrees, well, that means this is 42 degrees. So I figured out my first variable. X is 42 degrees. Now, second triangle I see is this triangle over here. Now, I only know one number now inside of this triangle. I only know the 22. I want to figure out what the z is, but I happen to know this 90 degree over here. Now, I notice if I put this 90 degree together with this angle right here, it makes a straight line. These are a linear pair. Linear pair means they should add up to 180. So I already have 90 of the 180. So I do 180 minus 90. Well, that gives me another 90. So these two added together gives me a straight line. Now I have two angles in the triangle, and I can figure out the third one. So I can take 180 and I can subtract 90 and 22. All right, and this is going to give me my z value. So 90 and 22 gives me 112, and 112 from 180 gives me 68 degrees. So this angle right here is 68 degrees. Now, the last one I need to figure out is this angle y. Now there's no triangle happening, but what I do notice is that Z and this 48 degrees are right next to it. If I put all three of these angles together, I get another linear pair. Right, so all three of these should add up to be 180 degrees. So if I add together 68, 48, and Y, it should give me 180 degrees, a linear pair. Then it just becomes an algebra problem, or it's essentially the same type up here, where I add the two numbers and I subtract it from 180. So 68 and 48 gives me 116. And then to get the Y by itself, I just subtract 116 from both sides. Right, so it's the exact same thing as doing it this way, it's just written a different way. So you can write whichever way you want. So my Y is 64 degrees. And there are my three answers. 42 for X, 64 for Y, and 68 for Z. All right, next objective on our test is writing equations of lines that are parallel or perpendicular. Now remember, if lines are parallel, they have the same slope. If lines are perpendicular, then they have opposite reciprocal slopes, which means I have to change the X and the Y, and then I also have to change the sign. So I'm writing an equation for the line perpendicular to this equation here through these points right here. Now I know the points are my X and my Y's, right, because it's a coordinate. Now my slope in this problem is 1/4. That's my slope. But if I'm going to write an equation that is perpendicular, I have to take this slope and I have to make it the opposite and reciprocal. So I flip it, it becomes 4/1 or just 4. And then since this is positive, my slope becomes negative. So I'm going to use -4 for my slope. So now I take the equation y equals mx plus b and I plug in all these values and solve for b. So for y, I plug in -4. For m, I plug in my new slope of -4. For x, I plug in 5. And then I put plus b because that's what I'm solving for. Now it's just an algebra problem. First thing I'm going to do is multiply. -4 times 5 gives me -20. And then to get the b by itself, I add 20 to both sides. So I get 16 equals b. So I have my slope, I have my b. Last step is to take them and plug them into the equation. Y equals, instead of m, I put -4x, and then plus my b value is 16. There is my equation. Number 10, write the equation of the horizontal line that passes through -3, 6. Let's make a little sketch here, right? -3 means go to the left 3, and then +6 means go up 6. And if it's a horizontal line, that means it's like the horizon, right? Now, I say, where does this graph cross? This crosses on the y-axis. So my equation is going to be y equals. It crosses at the number 6. And look at that. That's my y value here. My equation is just y equals 6. So if it's horizontal, it's a y equals. Number 11, write the equation of the line parallel to the one given that passes through these points. So I'm going to label my x and my y of the points. Then I'm going to find my slope of this equation. My slope is 2/3. If I'm talking about parallel, that means my slope should be the same. So my slope is going to stay 2/3. Just like the last problem, I plug in all of my values. So for y, I'm plugging in 2. For m, I'm plugging in 2/3. For x, I'm plugging in -6. And then I put plus b to solve. First thing I'm going to do is multiply straight across. So in a fraction, you just multiply the numbers on top. If you want to make this one into a fraction, I can put it over a 1. And then you just multiply straight across. So 2 times negative 6 gives me negative 12. 3 times 1 gives me 3. Negative 12 divided by 3 gives me negative 4. And every time you get a fraction, at least for our sake, you should get a really nice number to come out. So if you don't get a nice number, you're probably doing something wrong. And then to get the b by itself, I just move the 4 over to the other side, so I add 4. So I get my b value is 2 plus 4, which gives me 6. My final step, write this equation using my slope and my b value. So my final equation is y equals 2/3 x plus 6. All right. Next one says, write the equation of a vertical line that passes through 4, -8. So again, I'm going to make myself a little sketch here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 4, -8. Vertical lines means it's going up and down. Okay. Again, I say which axis is it crossing? Is it touching the x-axis or does it touch the y-axis? It touches the x-axis, so my equation is x equals, and then it touches at the number 1, 2, 3, 4, which is this number right here. So my equation is x equals 4. If it's vertical, it's x equals. If it's horizontal, it's y equals. All right, another one. Write the equation of a line parallel to this that passes through this point. So just like my last problems, I'm going to label my x and y on the point. I'm going to highlight my slope for this problem. My slope here is 5. It asks me to write a line that is parallel. So since it is parallel, my slope should stay exactly the same. So my slope stays as 5. Now I've got my x, my y, and my m. I'm going to plug it into the equation y equals mx plus b and solve for b. For y, I plug in 4. For m, I plug in 5. For x, I plug in -2. And I put plus b because that's what I'm solving for. All right. 5 times -2 gives me -10. And then to get the b by itself, I add the 10 to both sides. I get 4 plus 10 gives me 14 equals b. I take my slope, I take my b, last step, write it as an equation. Y equals 5x plus 14. There's my m, there's my b. Final equation. All right, on to the last page. Number 14. Write the equation of a line perpendicular to the one given to me that passes through the point 2, -6. So I mark my x and my y, and I highlight my slope, comes right before the x, it's 2/3. Now, it says perpendicular. The fraction and change the sign. So it was a positive 2/3. When I flip it, it becomes a -3/2. Now I take these numbers and I plug it into y equals mx plus b and solve for b. So for y, I plug in -6. For m, I plug in -3/2. That was weird. Okay. Back to our recording. Okay. First thing I'm going to do is get rid of this little fraction here. So I multiply straight across on top. You want to put it over a 1, you can. -3 times 2 gives me -6. 2 times 1 gives me 2. -6 divided by 2 gives me -3. and then I plus b. And then to get the b all by itself, I add the 3, add the 3. So negative 6 plus 3 gives me a negative 3 for my b value. So I've got my slope, I've got my b value, final step, write it as an equation, y equals negative 3 halves x minus 3. Anytime. Okay, last 3 questions are some mixed review. So it's stuff from some chapter 1 problems that you should still remember how to do. And so all 3 of these are from that. You will have a mixed review problem on your test. It might look like one of these, so good to know. First one, find the distance from this coordinate to this coordinate, round to the nearest 10th. So if you remember, got my x and my x and my y. Distance formula says, big ol' square root sign, you take your x values and subtract them, square them, then take your y values, subtract them and square them, and then we add them together. So essentially, I just want to find the differences between the x's, differences between the y's, and add them together. So I'm just going to plug my equation, my numbers into the equation. If I add my x's together, or excuse me, subtract my x's, I get 7 minus negative 2. And you can do negative 2 minus 7. It doesn't matter as long as you keep the order the same for both. Square it, plus, now I'm going to subtract my y's since I started over here with my x's. I'm going to start over here with my y's. Negative 4 minus 6. Order of operations says I do parentheses first. 7 minus negative 2 minus a negative becomes plus. So 7 plus 2 gives me 9. Do my other parentheses. Negative 4 minus 6 gives me negative 10. Order of operations says the next thing I do is exponents. So 9 squared means 9 times 9. That's 81. Negative 10 squared means negative 10 times negative 10. You should get a positive 100. You should never have negatives under here once you get to this point. I add those two together. I get the square root of 181, but I want to actually write that as a decimal. So when you go to your calculator, make sure that your what's it called mode is turned off, your portrait mode. You're just going to put the number in 181. And then you're going to push the button that is the square root with the little 2 next to it. So I get 13.45. It asks me to round to the nearest 10th. So 13 point, since after the 4 it's a 5 or bigger, it becomes 13.5. Number 16. If EF equals 2x minus 1, FG is 3x plus 5, and EG is 34, find the values of x, EF, and FG. So I'm looking at a segment here. Remember, the segment addition postulate says if you add the 2 small pieces together, it should give you the whole thing. So if I add the 2 smaller segments, it should give me the whole large segment. I'm going to label my picture here. EF is 2x minus 1. FG is 3x plus 5. The whole thing is 34. So I want to write an equation that says this piece plus this piece equals the whole. So 2x minus 1 plus 3x plus 5 equals 34. Now it's algebra. Combine like terms. 3x and 2x gives me 5x. 5 and negative 1 gives me positive 4. And then subtract 4 on both sides. I get 5x equals 30. And the last step is divide by 5. I get x equals 6. Now that's great, but it also asks me to find EF and FG. So now that I have x, I have to plug it into the equations. So EF was 2x minus 1. Instead of x, I'm going to put a 6 there. So 2 times 6 minus 1. 2 times 6 gives me 12. 12 minus 1 gives me 11. Do the same thing for the next one, FG. I'm going to plug it into the equation. 3 times 6 plus 5. So 3 times 6 gives me 18. 18 plus 5 gives me 23. And then I can check my work. Does 23 plus 11 give me 34? Yes, it does. So I did it correctly. All right, last one, number 17. Find the value of x and y. The drawing is not to scale. All right, so the first thing that I see is a nice x. And anytime I see an x, I'm going to start looking for vertical angles, two angles that are right across from one another. I notice that this angle right here, 6x minus 1, and this angle over here, 115, are vertical angles. That means they are congruent. They're exactly the same. So since this one's 115 degrees, this one should be 115 degrees. So I'm going to set these two equal to each other. 6x plus 1 equals 115. And then I'm going to solve it like an algebra problem. First thing I do is subtract 1 on both sides so I can get the x's alone. Get 6x equals 114. And then I divide both sides by 6. I get x equals 19 degrees. There's my first one. Now I have to figure out y. Now, y does not have a vertical angle, but, so these were two together, right? What I do notice is that this orange angle and this blue angle, when I put them together, I get a straight line. These two, 5y and 115, they are a linear pair. That means they should add up to be 180 degrees. So I'm going to write my equation as 5y plus 115 should give me 180 degrees. So an algebra problem, first thing I do is subtract 115 from both sides. I get 5y equals 65, and then I divide both sides by 5. I get y equals 13 degrees. And we're talking about degrees because they are angle measures. All right, so that is it. We are done with our Chapter 2 study guide. I hope that this helped you guys out, and hopefully it'll prepare you, make you feel more confident for your Chapter 2 test, which we will be taking very shortly. Okay, so have a grand day. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Okay, adios. Have a grand day, my gems.